Idaho Matters is brought to you in part by St. Luke's Pharmacy, now offering free home delivery. For daily medications or one time prescriptions, home delivery is easy to set up. It's convenient and safe. St. Luke's Pharmacy, now delivering to your doorstep. Information on how to get started at stlukesonline.org.
Love Boise State Public Radio podcasts? They are free to enjoy, but not free to produce. If you can give, your support helps keep shows like Idaho Matters and Scandalize available to everyone. Donate now at boisestatepublicradio.org.
More Idaho Matters now from the studios of Boise State Public Radio News. I'm Gemma Gaudet. A new Idaho law that will take effect in July is now in court after a group of transgender Idahoans decided to sue the state just last week. This law, which is House Bill 752, says you cannot use a bathroom designated for the opposite biological sex, even in private businesses. And it comes with a possible 5 years in prison for anyone who violates that ban. Kyle Farnenstiel with the Idaho Capital Sun has been covering this story and this lawsuit, and he is joining us now to talk more about this. Kyle, welcome back to the show. Nice to have you back.
Thanks for having me, Gemma.
So, Kyle, can you just start with the law for folks who are not familiar? What exactly does it say?
So it makes it a crime for people to, quote, knowingly and willfully enter a bathroom or changing room designated for another sex. That applies in government-owned buildings and what are called places of public accommodations. Those are in private businesses.
Okay, so as I mentioned, the law does come with possible jail time. Walk us through that as well.
Yeah, for a first offense, it's up to 1 year in prison and a misdemeanor. For a second offense within 5 years, it's a felony that could carry up to 5 years in prison.
And Kyle, are there any exceptions to the ban? Because I'm thinking about, for example, when my children were younger, I have boys. If we were out in public, they came into the women's restroom with me. And I did this up until they were probably about 10 years old.
Yeah, that's one of the exceptions in the bill. There's quite a few exceptions in it. It's, to, like you said, to accompany minor children into a bathroom or a changing room, to give medical assistance if you're an EMT trying to get into a bathroom of an opposite sex, you can. Law enforcement assistance, and this is kind of a tricky one, is if you are in, quote, dire need of using the bathroom, and that bathroom is the only one available to you at the time.
So, Kyle, talk to us about this lawsuit. Who's bringing the bathroom ban as this bill that would go into effect in July is being called?
Yeah, the lawsuit is by 6 transgender Idahoans. They're represented by the ACLU, the ACLU's Idaho chapter, Lambda Legal, and 2 private law firms. It was a federal lawsuit filed last week, and we're still waiting to see how things play out in the case.
So my understanding, Kyle, you said there are 6 people that brought this case. One of them, as you've reported on, is a 77-year-old transgender woman. Did you have an opportunity to talk with her, and what did she say about why she brought this suit?
I didn't talk with her personally. I quoted her remarks that were included in the lawsuit filing. Her name is
Mm-hmm.
Emily Jackson Edney. She says she's lived in Idaho her entire life and has used the women's bathroom in public without issue for the past 20 years. People perceive her as female and call her man. That's all according to what was in the lawsuit. It was filed in federal court. And she said she worries if she complies with this new law, her safety might be at risk because uh, she'll be in a male-centric space, and it might be obvious that she sticks out there.
Well, and you mentioned the ACLU. They are taking on this case. My understanding is that they held a news conference last week about the ban. And Kyle, what exactly has the ACLU said about this lawsuit?
They went through a lot about their legal claims, and a lot of we heard from some of the plaintiffs in the lawsuits. Those are the people suing who are talking about why they're suing and what the lawsuit means to them and how they're affected by the new law. But the big thing that I wanted to point out that stuck with me was this talk about how the legislature's anti-trans bills are pushing some people to move away from Idaho. That's something we've been hearing about for quite a while. I've had several folks tell me over the past few years that they feel like the legislature makes it harder for people in the LGBTQ plus community to live here on an annual basis. Just before this lawsuit was filed, I talked with a family of medical providers, the Devitt's. They plan to move out of Idaho over because of the bathroom ban. They wrote a book about raising their transgender daughter in Idaho, and to them, they told me that the bathroom ban was the last straw.
Mm. And Kyle, I understand that the legislators who have really pushed this bill really have pushed back on this idea of this law being discrimination. They are saying that this bill protects women and girls. Um, it prevents, and I'm quoting something right from your story. It prevents discomfort and voyeurism, escalation, and assaults. Um, can you talk to us a little bit more about what these Republican lawmakers are saying that this is not discriminatory? The reason I ask this question is that if we are looking at biological sex only, and a transgender man who was born biologically female goes into a public women's restroom, um, that would create a lot of discomfort for many women who would assume that this person is male, not biologically female.
That's a great question. I guess the line that I heard from many Republicans who backed the bill was that they were making the case that this is meant to protect women and girls' privacy and safety in private spaces. This was one of two bathroom ban bills that the legislature considered this year. This was the only one that passed. The other would have been a civil criminal, a civil transgender bathroom ban, and these bills seem to be arising out of this, partly inspired by this incident in the YMCA in Sandpoint, where uh, there was allegedly someone of the opposite gender, opposite sex, in a changing room. I can't speak to uh, all lawmakers' case for this
Mm-hmm.
law. I think you might have to talk to them to get more about that. But some Democrats didn't believe that the line that this was meant to protect women and girls only. They argued that this bill discriminated against transgender people clearly, and that's the case that this lawsuit is making.
And let's go back to the debate for a minute, if we could, Kyle, because not only was there a lot of debate amongst legislators, the Idaho Fraternal Order of Police, they also weighed in during the legislature. What did they have to say? And did they have concerns about this?
Yeah, that group was one of several law enforcement groups to raise concerns about the bill during the process. In a letter to one of the committees, the Idaho Fraternal Order of Police told lawmakers that the bill would put law enforcement officers in, quote, the difficult position of determining an individual's biological sex in order to enforce the statute.
So, Kyle, we now know that this is headed to court. Can you? So do we know what happens at this point? I mean, is there going to be a court case?
We'll see what happens from here. Before there would be any sort of trial in the federal court case, there would be the typical motions that occur before a trial, like to temporarily block the law, as the plaintiffs with the ACLU and the six transgender Idahoans who are suing are seeking. There would also possibly be a motion to dismiss the case by the state. The state official that was sued was the Attorney General Raul Lavador and county prosecuting attorneys. And then there could also be a motion to decide the case before trial, and it can take a little while for things to get here. So we'll keep an eye and update folks on what happens with the
Mhm.
case.
And before I let you go, Kyle, I mentioned in the beginning of our conversation that this law is supposed to go into effect in July. Do we have a date on that? And at this point, because we don't know what's going to happen in the court case, this law would take effect, correct?
Yeah, the law would take effect July 1. That's the start of the fiscal year. That's when a lot of new laws take effect. And, barring some kind of intervention from the court, the law will take effect at that point.
Well, Kyle, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And folks, if you want to read all of Kyle's reporting on this, he's really done an in-depth job and has followed this from the time it was being debated at the State House and, of course, still following it today. Make sure you go to the Idaho Capital Sun and you can read all of Kyle's reporting there. We've been speaking with Idaho Capital Sun reporter Kyle Fahn and still talking about a lawsuit against Idaho's new bathroom ban law that is set to go into effect come July 1st. And that'll do it for this episode of Idaho Matters. Make sure you check out our podcast feed because you can find more episodes of topics that might be interesting to you. And for more local news and headlines, make sure you subscribe to the Connector podcast. Are you subscribed to this Idaho Matters podcast yet? Make sure you're following so you never miss an episode. Hi, Idaho Matters podcast listeners. If you're on your smartphone right now, or if you have it nearby, I wanted to pop in to tell you about something to check out. Boise State Public Radio is now on Nextdoor. Here's what that means. Trusted local news, thoughtful reporting, and stories from across Idaho right along your neighborhood updates. If you already have the Nextdoor app, you're halfway there. Just search Boise State Public Radio and hit follow.